You are surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You are in relationships and still feel unseen. You have friends and still feel like no one truly knows you. You are living a full life on the outside and dying from loneliness on the inside. And you have told yourself a story about this loneliness, that you have not found your people yet, that no one understands you, that the world is cold and connection is rare, that you are uniquely alone in a way others are not. But that story is a lie. The loneliness you feel is not about being alone. It is not about lacking connection. It is not about other people failing to show up for you. The loneliness you feel is about you, about the ways you abandon yourself every single day, about how you betray your truth, ignore your needs, silence your voice, and perform a version of yourself designed to be acceptable while the real you suffocates in isolation. You are not lonely because you are alone. You are lonely because you have abandoned yourself, and no amount of external connection will cure that loneliness until you finally come home to who you actually are. Carl Jung discovered something that changes everything about how we understand loneliness and belonging. He found that the deepest loneliness is not the absence of others. It is the absence of self. When we abandon who we are to fit in, to be loved, to avoid rejection, we create an internal isolation more devastating than any external solitude. We can be surrounded by people and feel profoundly alone because the person they are connecting with is not us. It is the performance, the mask, the version we created to be acceptable. And that version can receive attention, can receive approval, can even receive what looks like love, but none of it reaches the real us. Because the real us is hidden, abandoned, left alone in the internal darkness, while the false self walks through the world collecting connections that never satisfy. This is why you can have everything externally and still feel empty. Why you can be in a relationship and feel single. Why you can be at a party and feel invisible. Why you can achieve success and feel like a fraud. Because none of it is happening to you. It is happening to the performed version, to the self you created to survive. And the real you, the one you abandoned to create that performance, remains alone, watching, waiting, wondering if you will ever come back, if you will ever stop betraying yourself long enough to finally be yourself. And that waiting, that abandonment, that betrayal creates a loneliness so profound that no external connection can touch it. Because the loneliness is not about being disconnected from others, it is about being disconnected from yourself. And you cannot solve internal disconnection with external connection. You can only solve it by coming home, by stopping the abandonment, by finally choosing yourself. Today, you are going to see the 4 ways you abandon yourself that create the loneliness you feel. The way you abandon your truth by never saying what you actually think. The way you abandon your needs by constantly prioritizing others. The way you abandon your boundaries by letting people treat you in ways that do not honor you. And the way you abandon your authenticity by performing whoever others need you to be. Look at these 4 patterns of self-abandonment, not with shame, not with judgment, but with the radical honesty required to finally see that you are not a victim of loneliness. You are the creator of it, through the daily moment-by-moment choices to betray yourself in favor of being acceptable to others. Jung taught that we cannot belong anywhere if we do not first belong to ourselves. And belonging to ourselves means refusing to abandon ourselves, means staying loyal to who we are, even when that costs us external approval, means choosing internal connection over external acceptance. This will not be comfortable. This will not validate your story that loneliness is something that happens to you. This will show you that loneliness is something you create through self-abandonment, through self-betrayal, through choosing everyone else over yourself. And while that truth is devastating, it is also liberating, Because if you create the loneliness, you can end it. Not by finding the right people, not by building more connections, not by finally being seen by someone external, but by seeing yourself. By staying with yourself, by refusing to abandon yourself one more time in the hope that external approval will fill the void that only internal loyalty can fill. The loneliness you feel is not about others. It is about you. And the cure is not out there. It is in here. In the choice to finally, after all this time, come home to yourself. Make your choice. Which way do you abandon yourself? And then stay with me. Because what you are about to discover will not give you a strategy to find connection. It will show you why you have been looking in the wrong place, and why the loneliness ends not when someone finally chooses you, but when you finally choose yourself. And stop abandoning the one person who has been alone all along, you. If your soul recognized the pattern of abandoning your truth, the way you never say what you actually think, never express what you truly believe, never voice disagreement or difference, you have revealed the primary way you create loneliness in your life. Every time you swallow your truth, every time you perform agreement when you disagree, every time you hide your real perspective to keep the peace or avoid rejection, you abandon yourself. You choose connection with others over connection with yourself. And in that moment, you become alone, not externally, internally, because the person others are connecting with is not you. It is the performed version, the agreeable version, the version that says what people want to hear. And the real you, the one with actual thoughts and perspectives and opinions, is left alone in the silence of everything you refuse to say. If you abandon your truth, your loneliness is not about lacking people. It is about lacking yourself in every interaction. You learn to abandon your truth early. Maybe you had parents who could not handle disagreement, who punished difference, who required you to mirror their beliefs to be loved. So you learned that truth costs connection, that expressing what you actually think leads to rejection, conflict, or withdrawal of love. So you stopped expressing it. You learned to scan environments for what was acceptable, to filter your thoughts through what others wanted to hear, to become a mirror that reflected back whatever kept you safe. And it worked. People liked you, you fit in, you avoided conflict. But the cost was devastating. The cost was you. You became so practiced at abandoning your truth that you stopped knowing what your truth even is. Someone asks your opinion and you freeze, not because you do not have one, but because you have trained yourself so thoroughly to say what is acceptable that you no longer have access to what is actually true for you. In Jungian terms, this is the complete domination of the persona over the self. The persona is meant to be a bridge between inner and outer, allowing you to navigate social contexts while maintaining connection to who you are. But when the persona becomes so thick, so impermeable, so divorced from the self beneath it, you lose access to your truth entirely. You become a performance with no performer, a mask with no face underneath. And you walk through the world connecting with people through this mask, wondering why every interaction leaves you feeling more alone. It is because you were not there. The real you was abandoned the moment you chose to perform instead of express. And now you live in a loneliness of your own creation, surrounded by people who think they know you, but are actually only connected to the version you present. The version that says what is safe, that agrees to avoid conflict, that mirrors to be loved, and the real you remains unknown, unseen, alone. People who abandon their truth experience a specific kind of loneliness. They have friends, but feel like no one really knows them. They have conversations, but feel like they never say anything real. They are in relationships, but feel like they are performing a role instead of being a person. And they keep hoping that someone will finally see through the performance, will somehow magically perceive the real them hiding underneath, and love that instead. But it does not work that way. People can only see what you show them, and you show them the agreeable mask, the filtered version, the truth-abandoning performance. So they connect with that, they love that, and you feel alone because their love is not reaching you. It is reaching the false self, and the false self cannot receive love. It can only deflect it, can only let it land on the mask, while the real you remains untouched, unseen, abandoned. The loneliness you feel is not because no one sees you. It is because you do not show yourself. Every time you hide your truth, you create isolation. Every time you perform agreement, you abandon connection with yourself. Every time you say what is acceptable instead of what is true, you choose loneliness. And then you wonder why you feel so alone. You blame others for not seeing you, but you never let them see you. You never show them your actual thoughts, your real perspectives, your true beliefs. You show them the performance, and then resent them for connecting with the performance instead of with you. But they cannot connect with what you do not reveal. They cannot see what you hide. They cannot love what you refuse to show. Breaking this pattern requires the most terrifying vulnerability. You must start speaking your truth, not perfectly, not only when it is safe, but consistently, even when it creates conflict, even when people disagree, even when you risk rejection, because speaking truth is the only path to ending loneliness. Not truth that is harsh or unfiltered, but truth that is real, that says I see it differently, that says I disagree, that says this is what I actually think. And when people respond, when they engage or disagree or even pull away, you will discover something essential. The ones who stay, the ones who engage with your truth, those are your people. And the ones who leave when you stop performing, they were never yours. They were connected to the mask. And losing connection to the mask is not loss, it is liberation. The loneliness created by abandoning truth ends when you finally speak it and discover that being known is worth the risk of being rejected. If this revealed your pattern, subscribe to Stop Abandoning Yourself. Comment how you abandon yourself. Your honesty might help someone else see their loneliness differently. If your heart recognized the pattern of abandoning your needs, the way you constantly prioritize others, ignore what you require, and act as though your needs do not matter, you have revealed another primary way you create loneliness. Every time you dismiss your needs, every time you say, I am fine, when you are not, every time you put everyone else first while treating yourself as last, you abandon yourself. You teach yourself that your needs are not important, that others deserve care, but you do not, that your role is to give endlessly while never asking for anything in return. And in that dynamic, you create a profound internal isolation, because you are treating yourself the way you fear others will treat you. You are proving to yourself that you are not worth caring for, and that internal abandonment creates a loneliness that no amount of giving to others can cure. If you abandon your needs, your loneliness is not about lacking support. It is about refusing to ask for or receive the support you desperately need. You learn to abandon your needs through experiences that taught you they were unwelcome. Maybe you had parents who were overwhelmed, and you learned that expressing needs made you a burden. Maybe you had siblings whose needs took priority, and you concluded yours did not matter as much. Maybe you asked for help once and were rejected, shamed, or ignored, and you decided never to risk that pain again. Or maybe you simply absorbed the cultural message that self-sufficiency is strength and needing others is weakness. So you became someone who needs nothing from anyone, who handles everything alone, who gives endlessly but never asks. And you told yourself this was virtue, this was being strong, capable, selfless. But it was not. It was self-abandonment. And every time you ignore your needs, you reinforce the belief that you are not worth caring for, that your needs are shameful, that asking makes you weak, and you create an internal loneliness where you become the person who refuses to show up for yourself. In Jungian psychology, this is the shadow of the caregiver archetype. In healthy form, the caregiver gives from abundance and can also receive. In shadow, the caregiver gives compulsively from depletion and cannot receive at all. If you abandon your needs, you are living the shadow version. You give to prove your worth. You meet everyone else's needs to feel valuable. You exhaust yourself in service to others while your own needs go completely unmet. And you wonder why you feel so alone, why no one shows up for you, why you are always the giver and never the receiver. But the truth is brutal. People cannot meet needs you will not express. They cannot give to someone who refuses to receive. You have trained every relationship in your life that you are the strong one who needs nothing. And now you resent them for believing you. But they are not failing you. You are failing yourself by abandoning your needs before anyone else can. People who abandon their needs live in a specific kind of loneliness. They are surrounded by people they help, people they support, people whose needs they meet, but they feel completely alone because the support only flows one way. They give and give and give. And when they finally collapse from exhaustion, when they finally need help, no one knows how to give to them, because they never let anyone practice. They never asked. They never expressed need. They never let themselves be vulnerable enough to receive. So people stand there, wanting to help, not knowing how, because the person who abandoned their needs does not know how to let help in. And the loneliness deepens, because even when people want to show up, even when support is available, you cannot receive it. Your need abandonment is so complete that receiving feels wrong, feels like weakness, feels like failure. So you stay alone even when you are not alone, because you abandoned yourself before anyone else could. The loneliness you feel is not because no one cares. It is because you will not let them care. Every time you say, "I am fine," when you are falling apart, you abandon yourself. Every time you handle everything alone when you need support, you create isolation. Every time you prioritize everyone else's needs while ignoring your own, you teach yourself that you matter less. And that teaching creates the deepest loneliness. Not the loneliness of lacking people, but the loneliness of lacking yourself, of being the one person who will not show up for you, who will not acknowledge your needs, who will not ask for help. And no amount of external support can fix that until you stop abandoning your needs and start expressing them. Breaking this pattern requires admitting that you have needs, and that having needs is not weakness, it is humanity. You must practice expressing needs even when it feels vulnerable. I need help. I need support. I need someone to listen. And when people respond, when they show up, you must practice receiving, not deflecting, not minimizing, not immediately returning to caretaking, but actually receiving, letting yourself be cared for, letting your needs matter, and discovering that the loneliness ends, not when you finally find someone who magically knows what you need, but when you stop abandoning your needs and start expressing them, and let people show up for you the way you have been showing up for everyone else. If your spirit recognized the pattern of abandoning your boundaries, the way you let people cross lines, take more than you want to give, and treat you in ways that do not honor your worth, you have revealed another devastating way you create loneliness. Every time you say yes when you mean no, every time you tolerate behavior that violates you, every time you let someone take advantage of your kindness, you abandon yourself. You teach yourself that your limits do not matter, that other people's comfort is more important than your well-being, that being loved requires having no boundaries. And in that abandonment, you create a profound isolation, because you are allowing yourself to be treated in ways that make you feel unseen, unvalued, used. And then you wonder why you feel alone even in relationship. It is because the relationship is not with you. It is with the boundaryless version you perform, the version that says yes to everything, that tolerates anything, That never defends itself, and that version can be used but cannot be truly connected with. If you abandon your boundaries, your loneliness is not about being alone. It is about being with people who do not respect you because you do not respect yourself. You learn to abandon your boundaries through experiences that taught you they were dangerous or selfish. Maybe you had parents who could not handle being told no, who raged or withdrew when you asserted yourself. So you learned that boundaries mean conflict, rejection, abandonment, that to be loved requires having no limits, or maybe you grew up in an environment where your boundaries were consistently violated, your privacy invaded, your space disrespected, your no ignored. And you learned that boundaries do not protect you anyway, so why bother having them? Or maybe you were praised for being easygoing, flexible, accommodating, and punished for being difficult or assertive. So you became someone with no boundaries, someone who lets people take whatever they want, someone who never says no. And you told yourself this was kindness, this was being loving, this was avoiding being selfish. But it was not. It was self-abandonment, and every boundary you fail to set, every violation you tolerate, every time you let someone treat you badly, you reinforce that you do not deserve respect. And that creates a loneliness where you are surrounded by people but feel completely alone, because none of them are treating you in ways that honor who you are. In Jungian terms, this is the absence of the sovereign archetype, the part of the psyche that protects your territory, defends your kingdom, sets limits on who can enter and how they must behave. If you abandon your boundaries, this archetype is in shadow. You have no internal protector, no voice that says, this is too much, or that is not okay, or you need to leave now. So people do whatever they want. They take your time, your energy, your resources. They disrespect you, dismiss you, violate you. And you let them. Not because you enjoy it, but because you have no practice defending yourself, no experience with saying no, no belief that you are allowed to have limits, so you tolerate the intolerable. And you feel profoundly alone because you are being treated as though you do not matter, and you are the one allowing it. You are abandoning yourself by refusing to protect yourself, by letting people in who should not be there, by tolerating behavior that should not be tolerated. People who abandon boundaries experience loneliness even in crowded rooms. They are surrounded by people who take from them, who call when they need something, who show up when it is convenient, who cross every line without consequence. And the boundary abandoner feels used, feels invisible, feels like no one actually cares about them, only about what they can provide. But here is the brutal truth. You trained them to treat you that way. Every time you said yes when you meant no, you taught them your yes means nothing. Every time you tolerated disrespect, you taught them disrespect is acceptable. Every time you let someone cross a boundary without consequence, you taught them you have no boundaries. They are not the problem. Your refusal to defend yourself is. And the loneliness you feel is not because you lack connection. It is because you are connected to people who do not respect you, because you taught them not to through your own self-abandonment. The work here is revolutionary. You must start setting boundaries even when it feels selfish, mean, or risky. You must say no. You must defend yourself. You must remove people who consistently violate you. And you must tolerate the discomfort when people react badly. Because they will. People who benefited from your boundarylessness will be upset when you suddenly have limits. They will call you selfish. They will say you have changed. They will try to guilt you back into the old pattern. Let them be upset. Let them leave if they must. Because anyone who only valued you for your lack of boundaries was never valuing you. They were valuing your usefulness. And losing people who only valued your usefulness is not loss. It is liberation. The loneliness ends not when you find people who magically respect boundaries you never set. It ends when you set boundaries and discover that the people who respect them are your actual people, and the ones who do not can leave. Because being alone is better than being with people who make you feel alone by treating you as though you do not matter. Boundaries do not create loneliness. Boundary abandonment does. If your soul recognized the pattern of abandoning your authenticity, the way you become whoever others need you to be, morphing and adapting and performing to fit every environment, you have revealed the deepest form of self-abandonment that creates loneliness. Every time you hide who you actually are, every time you perform a version designed to be acceptable, every time you mold yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you abandon yourself. You choose being liked over being known. You choose acceptance over authenticity, and in that choice, you create a loneliness more profound than any external isolation, because you are living a life where you are surrounded by people, but none of them know you. They know the performance, the adapted version, the person you become to be loved. And the real you, the one you abandoned to create that performance, remains completely alone, unseen, unknown, waiting for the day you finally stop performing and start being. If you abandon your authenticity, your loneliness is not about lacking connection. It is about connecting through a false self that can receive attention, but never real love. Because real love requires a real self. And you do not show them your real self. You show them the performance. And then wonder why you feel so alone. You learn to abandon your authenticity through experiences that taught you that who you are is not acceptable. Maybe you expressed your real self as a child and were rejected, mocked, or punished. Maybe your parents had a clear image of who you should be, and you learned that being different meant being unloved. Maybe you were bullied for being yourself and decided safety meant becoming someone else. Or maybe you simply absorbed the message that to belong requires conforming, that to be loved requires performing, that to be accepted requires abandoning anything about you that is different, difficult, or real. So you became a chameleon. You learned to read rooms, to sense what people wanted, to become that, and it worked. People liked you, you fit in, you were accepted, but the cost was you. You became so practiced at abandoning your authenticity that you stopped knowing who you are beneath the performance. Someone asks about your interests, and you freeze. Not because you have none, but because you have trained yourself to mirror others' interests instead of having your own. Someone asks what you want, and you defer, not because you are easygoing, but because you have abandoned your authentic desires so thoroughly that you no longer have access to them. In Jungian terms, this is the persona completely overtaking the self. Jung taught that the persona is necessary for navigating social contexts, but when the persona becomes so thick that the self beneath it is completely inaccessible, you become hollow, a performance with no performer. And you walk through life connecting with people through various masks: the professional mask at work, the fun mask with friends, the caretaker mask in family, the lover mask in relationships, and none of them are you. You are not there. You were abandoned the moment you chose performance over presence. And now you live in relationships where people think they know you, but are actually only connected to whichever version you presented. And you feel profoundly alone because their love is landing on the mask, never reaching the real you, hiding underneath. Unseen, unknown, abandoned. People who abandon authenticity have a specific experience of loneliness. They have many connections, but no real intimacy. They are liked by everyone, but known by no one. They perform so well that people think they are close to them, think they understand them, think they love them. But they do not. They cannot. Because the real person was never revealed. Only the adapted version, the palatable version, the version designed to be accepted. And that version can be liked, can be approved of, can even be admired, but it cannot be truly loved. Because love requires knowing, And knowing requires showing, and you never show yourself. You show them the performance, and then feel devastatingly alone, because even when surrounded by people who claim to love you, you know they do not actually know you. And being loved for who you are not is lonelier than not being loved at all. The loneliness you feel is not because you have not found your people. It is because your people cannot find you. You are hiding. Behind performances, behind adaptations, behind carefully curated versions designed to be acceptable. And your people, the ones who would actually love the real you, walk right past because you are not showing them the real you. You are showing them the mask. And they connect with the mask, or they move on, and you stay lonely, surrounded by people who love a version of you that does not exist, while the real you remains completely alone, unknown, unwanted, not because you are unlovable, but because you will not let yourself be loved. You abandoned authenticity before anyone could reject it. And now you are living the rejection you were trying to avoid. The rejection of being unknown, of being unseen, of being alone even when you are not alone. Breaking this pattern requires the most terrifying vulnerability. You must start showing yourself, not the performed version, the real version. With all your mess, with all your difference, with all the parts you decided were unacceptable. You must stop adapting, stop morphing, stop performing, and start being. And yes, some people will leave. The ones who were connected to the performance will not recognize the real you, but let them leave. They were never yours. And the people who stay, the ones who see the real you and move closer instead of away, those are your people. The loneliness ends not when you perfect the performance. It ends when you drop it. And discover that being known is worth the risk of being rejected, that showing yourself is worth losing people who only love the mask, that authenticity creates the connection performance never can. Now that you have seen which way you abandon yourself, now that you understand that loneliness is not something that happens to you, but something you create through self-betrayal, it is time to face what Carl Jung discovered that changes everything about belonging and connection. Loneliness is not fundamentally about other people. It is about your relationship with yourself. And when that relationship is characterized by abandonment, when you betray your truth, ignore your needs, fail to protect your boundaries, and hide your authenticity, you create an internal isolation that no external connection can cure. Jung spent his career proving that we cannot belong anywhere if we do not first belong to ourselves. And belonging to ourselves means refusing to abandon ourselves, means staying loyal to who we are, even when that costs us external approval. Means choosing internal connection over external acceptance, because external connection built on self-abandonment is not real connection. It is performance, and you cannot cure loneliness with performance. You can only cure it with presence. With finally showing up for yourself. Jung taught that the fundamental psychological task is individuation, becoming who you actually are instead of who you were conditioned to be, and individuation requires refusing to abandon yourself. It requires speaking your truth, even when others disagree. It requires expressing your needs, even when that makes you vulnerable. It requires setting boundaries, even when that creates conflict. It requires being authentic, even when that means being different. And all of these require something terrifying. They require prioritizing your relationship with yourself over your relationship with others. They require accepting that you cannot please everyone. That being real will cost you some connections. That authenticity means some people will leave, and that is okay. Because the people who leave when you stop abandoning yourself were never connected to you anyway. They were connected to the abandoned version, to the people-pleasing version, to the boundaryless version, to the performed version. And losing connection to false versions of yourself is not loss, it is liberation. But here is what makes this so difficult. Self-abandonment feels like love. When you prioritize others' needs over your own, you tell yourself you are being selfless, caring, devoted. When you hide your truth to avoid conflict, you tell yourself you are being mature, kind, peaceful. When you perform authenticity to be accepted, you tell yourself you are being flexible, adaptable, easy to love. But none of that is love. It is self-betrayal disguised as virtue. Real love, both self-love and love for others, requires presence, requires showing up as you actually are, requires expressing what is true, what is needed, what must be protected, what is real. And that kind of presence creates connection that self-abandonment never can. Because people cannot connect with someone who is not there. They can only connect with the performance. And connection to performance is not intimacy, it is transaction. You perform acceptability. They provide approval, but neither of you is actually present. Neither of you is actually known. And that is why the loneliness persists, because you are not lonely from lack of people. You are lonely from lack of yourself in every interaction. Jung believed that the loneliness most people feel is actually a call from the self that has been abandoned, a call to come home, to stop betraying yourself, to start showing up as you actually are. And when you answer that call, when you stop abandoning yourself, something profound happens. The external loneliness often increases at first, because people who were connected to the abandoned version cannot connect with the authentic one, so they leave, or pull away, or express disappointment that you are no longer who they needed you to be. And this feels like confirmation that authenticity costs connection. But what is actually happening is that false connections are ending so real ones can begin. You are losing people who were never yours. People who loved the mask, people who needed the boundaryless giver, people who wanted the truth-hiding, agreeable version, and their leaving creates space for people who can actually connect with you, with who you are, with your truth, your needs, your boundaries, your authenticity. And those connections, the ones built on presence instead of performance, cure loneliness in a way self-abandonment never could. The path out of loneliness is not finding more people, it is finding yourself. It is stopping the daily betrayal. It is refusing to abandon your truth one more time, to ignore your needs one more time, to tolerate boundary violations one more time, to hide your authenticity one more time, and instead choosing yourself. Speaking your truth, expressing your needs, protecting your boundaries, being authentic, even when, especially when, that cost you approval, acceptance, or connection with people who only valued the abandoned version. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. And it is the only cure for loneliness, because loneliness is not healed by addition, by adding more people, more connections, more relationships. It is healed by subtraction, by subtracting the self-abandonment, by stopping the betrayal, by coming home to yourself, and discovering that the moment you stop abandoning yourself, the loneliness begins to dissolve. Not because external connection increases, but because internal connection is restored. And internal connection is what you have been seeking all along. So now you know how you abandon yourself. You understand that loneliness is not about others failing to show up. It is about you failing to show up for yourself. But awareness without action is just painful knowing. Breaking the pattern of self-abandonment requires practice, daily, uncomfortable, revolutionary practice. You must learn to choose yourself when every conditioning tells you to choose others. To stay loyal to yourself when every fear says that loyalty costs connection. Here is how you actually stop abandoning yourself and end the loneliness that self-abandonment creates. If you abandon your truth, your practice is speaking one honest thing per day. Start small, with low-stakes truths. Someone asks your opinion, give your actual opinion, not the one you think they want to hear. Someone suggests a plan you do not like. Say so instead of agreeing. Someone makes a statement you disagree with. Express your different perspective instead of staying silent. And notice what happens in your body when you speak truth. Notice the fear, the panic, the urge to take it back, to soften it, to apologize for having a different view. That is the truth abandonment pattern trying to protect you from rejection. Your work is to breathe through the discomfort and let your truth stand. Do not explain it away. Do not qualify it into oblivion. Just speak it and let it exist, and watch what happens. Most people will not reject you. They will engage. They will respect you more. And slowly, through repeated truth-telling, you will build a life where people know you instead of knowing the performed version, and the loneliness of being unknown will dissolve. If you abandon your needs, your practice is expressing one need per day. Stop saying, "I am fine," when you are not. Stop handling everything alone when you need help. Ask for support. I need help with this. I need someone to listen. I need reassurance. And when people respond, when they offer help, receive it. Do not deflect. Do not minimize your need. Do not immediately shift to meeting their needs instead. Actually receive. Let yourself be cared for. Let your needs matter. This will feel vulnerable and wrong. It will trigger every belief that needing others is weakness, but push through, because needs expressed and met create connection. Needs hidden and unmet create loneliness. The more you practice expressing needs, the more you teach your nervous system that you matter, that your needs are valid, that asking does not make you weak, it makes you human. And slowly, the loneliness of carrying everything alone dissolves because you finally let people carry you. If you abandon your boundaries, your practice is saying one no per day. This will feel impossible at first. You have said yes to everything for so long that no feels foreign, but practice it. No, I cannot take that on. No, that does not work for me. No, I need you to stop doing that. No explanation, no justification, just no. And when guilt floods in, when people push back, when they act hurt or offended by your boundary, hold it anyway, because their discomfort with your boundary is information. People who respect you will respect your no. People who do not respect you will try to override it. And knowing the difference is essential. Let the people who cannot respect boundaries leave. They were only in your life because you had none, and their leaving creates space for people who understand that respecting limits is how you honor someone. The loneliness of being with people who use you dissolves when you finally protect yourself and attract people who do not need to be protected from. If you abandon your authenticity, your practice is being yourself in one interaction per day. Stop adapting. Stop performing. Stop becoming whoever they need. Be who you actually are. Share a real interest instead of mirroring theirs. Express a genuine preference instead of deferring. Show a part of your personality you usually hide. Wear what you actually want to wear. Say what you actually think. Be who you actually are. And yes, some people will be surprised, some will be uncomfortable, some will leave. Let them. They were connected to the performance, not to you. And their leaving creates space for people who can handle the real you, who want the real you, who love the real you instead of the version you performed. The loneliness of being unknown dissolves when you finally show yourself, when you stop hiding behind masks and start living authentically, when you discover that being seen for who you are is worth losing people who only saw the performance. For all forms of self-abandonment, the universal practice is this: pause before betraying yourself. You will feel the urge to stay silent instead of speaking truth, the urge to say I am fine instead of expressing need, the urge to say yes instead of setting a boundary, the urge to perform instead of being authentic. And in that moment, pause. Notice the urge. Recognize it as the self-abandonment pattern trying to protect you from rejection. And then choose differently. Choose yourself, not easily, not comfortably, but consciously. Speak the truth. Express the need. Set the boundary. Be authentic and discover that choosing yourself does not create loneliness. Self-abandonment creates loneliness. And the moment you stop abandoning yourself, the moment you choose loyalty to yourself over approval from others, the loneliness begins to heal, not because you suddenly have more people, but because you finally have yourself. And having yourself is the end of loneliness. You have walked through something today that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You have looked directly at the ways you abandon yourself and seen them not as virtues, but as betrayals, not as kindness, but as self-destruction, not as ways to connect, but as ways you create the very loneliness you are trying to escape. You abandon your truth and wonder why no one knows you. You abandon your needs and wonder why no one supports you. You abandon your boundaries and wonder why people use you. You abandon your authenticity and wonder why you feel alone even when surrounded. And now you understand. The loneliness is not happening to you. You are creating it through the daily moment-by-moment choices to prioritize everyone else over yourself, to choose external approval over internal connection, to betray who you are in the hope that performance will earn you the love that only presence can create. Carl Jung spent his life proving that we cannot run from ourselves, that we cannot cure internal isolation through external connection. That belonging begins not out there, but in here, with choosing ourselves, with staying loyal to ourselves, with refusing to abandon ourselves one more time in the hope that someone else will finally show up for us the way we refuse to show up for ourselves. And he discovered that the moment we stop abandoning ourselves, the moment we choose truth over performance, needs over self-sufficiency, boundaries over boundlessness, authenticity over acceptability, everything changes. Not immediately, not magically, but fundamentally. The loneliness begins to dissolve, not because we suddenly have more friends, but because we finally have ourselves. And having ourselves is the foundation of all real connection. Because people cannot connect with someone who is not there. They can only connect with the performance. And connection to performance is not intimacy. It is transaction. And transaction always leaves us lonely. The loneliness you feel is a call from the part of you that you abandoned, the part that has been alone all this time while you were out there performing, people-pleasing, betraying yourself to be loved. And that part is waiting for you to finally come home, to stop abandoning yourself, to start showing up as you actually are. And when you answer that call, when you stop the betrayal, something miraculous happens. Yes, some people leave. The ones who were connected to the abandoned version cannot connect with the authentic one, but let them go. They were never yours, and their leaving creates space. Space for people who can actually see you, who can love the real you instead of the performed version, who understand that connection requires presence, not performance. And those connections, the real ones, cure loneliness in ways self-abandonment never could. Which way do you abandon yourself? Your truth, your needs, your boundaries, your authenticity? And will you keep abandoning yourself, keep betraying who you are, keep creating the loneliness you are trying to escape? Or will you finally, courageously, choose yourself? Will you speak your truth even when others disagree? Express your needs even when it feels vulnerable? Set boundaries even when people push back? Be authentic even when it costs you approval? Share which pattern you recognized in the comments. Your honesty might help someone else see that their loneliness is not about lacking people, it is about lacking themselves. Subscribe for more on ending self-abandonment and building real connection. 2 more videos are appearing now. Choose one to continue. Until we meet again, remember this: the loneliness you feel is not about being alone. It is about abandoning yourself. And the cure is not finding more people. It is finding yourself, coming home to yourself, choosing yourself. Staying with yourself even when every conditioning tells you to abandon yourself for approval. Jung taught that we cannot belong anywhere if we do not first belong to ourselves. And belonging to ourselves means refusing to betray ourselves, means speaking truth, means expressing needs, means setting boundaries, means being authentic, even when, especially when, that costs us external connection. Because external connection built on self-abandonment is not real. It is performance. And performance always leaves us lonely. The loneliness ends when the self-abandonment ends, when you finally stop betraying yourself and start being yourself. When you discover that the connection you have been seeking out there has been waiting in here all along, in the choice to finally, after all this time, stop abandoning yourself and start choosing yourself. That is where loneliness ends, not in finding the right people, but in becoming the right person. To yourself. For yourself. With yourself, the loneliness was never about them, it was always about you, and now you know, and knowing is the beginning of everything, the beginning of choosing yourself, the beginning of ending self-abandonment, the beginning of coming home, finally, fully, to yourself.